Hello and welcome to AEF TV in association with Engerati, broadcasting from AEF Dubai 2015. And we're joined now by Chris from Lekela. Chris, firstly, welcome. Thank you for making the time to be with us. And because we only have a short time to discuss, I'm going to dive straight into it.
Sure.
You've made an announcement, I think either today or very recently anyway, about a couple of renewable projects. And can you tell us a little bit about that, because that will help frame the narrative that we're going to explore further down the line.
Absolutely, thank you very much. Yes, we've made this morning actually an announcement about another success that we had in South Africa, where we got an award for two projects, 110 megawatts, the other one 140 megawatts, both wind. And for us it's great because it's one of our key markets. We have already 360 megawatts in construction currently, 3 projects in South Africa. So we're very proud that we have been also now awarded the next tranche. And clearly we are looking forward to go also for next projects that are coming up in South Africa. But in addition to that, just 2 days ago, we have made another announcement, and this was related to Egypt, where we have signed an agreement with the authorities under what they call the feed-in tariff scheme, where we've been awarded, or we've signed the agreement for 50 megawatts wind and 50 megawatts solar. And that's one of the projects, or two of the projects that we are pursuing there, but definitely not the last ones. We are also on bigger projects where we expect relatively soon an announcement by the customer.
So when I was looking at your website, you promote yourself as a platform, and when people use that word, they use it with intent and a reason. So why do you call yourselves a platform?
Well, Lekela is a joint venture between two companies. The one is Actis, which is a private equity firm with about $7.5 billion US dollars in assets. They own 60% of Lekela. The other one is Mainstream Renewable Power, which is in the renewable. It's a worldwide developer and owner of renewable assets with about 16 gigawatts either in development, construction, or operation. And the reason why we call ourselves a platform is I'm in a good position that not only capital is coming into the Lekela Power through these two shareholders, but we are working as a team. So when we do business, it's not just Lekela Power. I have behind me the resources, not only the capital, but the resources and the people of both the development side, Mainstream, and the capital side, Actis. And Lekela is a new platform, but as it was announced, the 1.9 billion US dollars, that what we are looking to achieve, about 1,000 megawatts. We've chosen the name Lekela, which actually means together. That's in Gaelic. We are Africanized this name a little bit, so it sounds African. And what stands behind is working with all the relevant parties in order to optimize the project and the project benefits, not only on a shareholder basis, but also to the people and the host country.
And you're focused on renewables, and it's one of those things that's come out as a bit of a theme this year, that renewables are been taken much more seriously on an African level as part of the generation mix. Can you give us a little bit of a view of how you see that? I mean, you probably agree, but can you tell us a little bit as to why you think that's happening?
Yeah. No, you're right. I fully agree that we are now entering actually the golden age of renewables. I think 5-10 years ago, the renewables would not have worked because they needed a lot of subsidies, and so that's not sustainable over the long term. At least not to build really a full industry about this. But what we have seen now in the African continent is, first of all, the resources for renewable, solar and wind, are there in abundance. Number two, the prices for both solar and wind have come down. We are now at almost at parity, or I think in wind power even below parity. So we can definitely, renewable power can definitely be competitive compared to, diesel generation or other conventional generation. And third point is, of course, the fuel comes for free. There is no foreign exchange which leaves the country during the 20 years of operation. And I think these are very great arguments why renewable power will go ahead. And last but not least, we shouldn't forget that as well, once you reach financial closing, it takes 1, maximum 2 years to be operational. And Africa is thirsty for power, as we all know. So the sooner we can get there, the better. And I think renewable power plays a big role.
So it's got that speed element
Exactly.
Of it as well. So one of the other questions I was going to ask you is, a conversation that I'm surprised we aren't having more of is, what do you need to do on a sort of transmission and distribution level in order to make that part of the power equation ready for renewables? Because we all know, the issues with renewables. I'm not going to repeat that, but do you think that there needs to be much more attention on the transmission and distribution infrastructure in order to capitalize on what you're calling the golden age of renewables?
Yeah. Well, it depends a bit. As you rightly said, there is actually currently only one drawback with renewables, and this is that it's intermediate power. It's not base load. And if you combine it currently with batteries or anything else, it may be still a bit too expensive. So we're talking about intermediate power. So clearly the transmission system plays a big role. But let me tell you that technology exists such that up to 40% of a grid can be done through, can absorb renewable power. So if you take, for instance, an example, Hawaii, they have 40% is already now generated by renewable power. And when we look at Africa, it's not even single digits. So in most of the cases, the system is there. It can absorb at least up to 20%.
So you mentioned the technology. The technology is there for a grid to absorb up to 20%, and I know Germany wants to be more ambitious than that exactly. on occasion. But can you just bring to life a little bit about what that technology looks like? What is the technology that's needed in order to absorb 40% renewables, for example?
Well, you basically need a control center who can run the system up and down, who gets all the information about when the wind is blowing, when the sun is shining, and all of that. And this has to be part of a central system which can look at this and based on that work with the other power generation assets that are around so that the system stability remains in place. So there is obviously investment required to this, but overall it makes a lot of sense. A lot of countries have implemented that.
And again, on the investment side then, so clearly you need to make that investment if you're going to follow a renewable strategy, particularly at scale. How is that investment going to come into the grid? Will vehicles like yours also be required to strengthen the grid if you're going to put a wind farm in place and so on? Is that how it's happening?
Well, currently it happens actually the other way around.
Right.
What we're looking at is we're looking at location where the grid can take it. That's one of the first things we do. We look at grid connection, how strong is the grid? Can it take it 20, 40, 100 megawatt or not? and currently we've seen that there are still places around where you can do that. Because an investment, it will be not an investment just simply for one wind farm. It has to be a holistic approach, looking at the whole country. Where do we need to strengthen the system? In what areas? Where do we have to expand the system, etc.? So it goes way beyond a single project, and that's why currently there are still pockets where you can see where it makes a lot of sense based on the current environment that you have, with little support and investment from the utility to accommodate renewable power.
And you mentioned earlier on, you were talking about Egypt, and they have adopted a feed-in tariff model, and other countries are doing differently. I mean, what are some of the areas where you would say is innovative in terms of making things friendly towards renewables? I mean, I'm talking here about some of the project finance conditions that need to be in place for sort of renewables or any type of power plant to be put in.
All right. I mean, I would like to mention here the successful model of South Africa. They have gone through 4 phases, 4 rounds, and what was really critical is that they walked the talk. So when they came up with round number 1, of course it was expensive, but by now the power tariffs have gone down, on the solar side by 60 to 70%, and in the wind side by 50%. But if you don't start with the first round, you never get to the 4th round, and you never get this benefit. So it's important that whatever the government does, that he walks the talk and attracts initial investors in there, and with that, of course, initial lenders, and it becomes then more and more competitive, and you get more and more people interested in this. And that's why we think also in Egypt they're going in the same direction, which they're somewhat similar in that they have a feed-in tariff, but also for 2,000 megawatts plus 2,000 megawatts solar and wind. And there will be a next round, and the next round, of course, we expect to be similar, like in South Africa, where we'll get better terms and conditions. I think this is a model that other countries can also apply, because it's important to get positive track record on projects that are being built and operated in a certain host country, before then more and more are coming in.
And you can take the learning from that as well. So one of the other things, and again, let's give a nod to the fact that we're here at AEF in Dubai, and I kind of like to ask you the question is like going, are there any sort of discussions and or talks that you've seen that kind of particularly encourage you, around this sector? What's been your experience while you've been here?
Yeah, I think, as you said in your initial statement, it's amazing how many people today are talking about renewable power in Africa. 1 or 2 years ago, nobody would have talked about this. And now virtually every country is talking about that. Not only talking, but we are seeing that they change the legislation to allow for private investment in renewable power. They walk the talk by going through bidding processes to get the best deals for themselves. And we're seeing projects being there, happening, successfully operating. And I think that's a model that can be replicated all over. So renewables are there to stay. I think people have recognized that up to 20% of renewables in your energy mix is actually a good mix, particularly now when renewables are competitive compared to other sources of power generation, and they are fast they are. 1 year, as I mentioned, or 2 years, and you have the electrons flowing. And that's something that takes much longer with other types of generation.
And can I ask you a more sort of macro question
Yes,
now,
please.
as we're coming to the end of our time here? Is theoretically, how high could renewable penetration be in the grid? I mean, how far could you push it?
That's a very good question. I'll give you an example again. Egypt. What they have in mind is by 2022, to reach 20% in renewables. But that's only the first target. They would like to go up to 40% by 2035. And furthermore, to 60% by 2050. And I think these are realistic targets. In particular, as we see right now that the battery costs are coming down with Elon Musk and other people are building large factories where you can get economies of scale. I think rather sooner than later you will see that the combination of wind or solar with battery will be competitive. And once this last problem has been resolved on the intermittency of renewable power.
Gets more of a baseload characteristic then, doesn't it?
Exactly. So there's nothing to stop going for more.
And what's the theoretical maximum? Do you know? Has anybody crunched the numbers?
No, I don't think so. But I think it all depends on a country right now. I think it depends on.
And I suppose on technology as well.
Exactly,
Yeah.
That was my second point on technology. Where you are currently, that's right. But as I mentioned, 20 to 40 is currently, what is doable. 20 if you haven't really much of renewable power, you can really, if your grid is still relatively stable, you can go to 20 relatively easy with little investments. 40 it gets already currently it gets it needs investment, no doubt about it. And above that it's currently difficult.
And just a sort of final question before we wrap up is, are there any sort of renewable technologies on the horizon that you or your team are keeping an eye on, which you are particularly excited about or particularly show promise?
Yeah. Yes, there are actually quite a lot of people looking at new ways of generating renewable power, and to my surprise, these developments are such that they could even further reduce the power tariff to the grid. So there are some very exciting technologies on the go, but currently they are really on the testing phase. So I cannot reveal too much of this. But as an investor in renewable power, we're watching very closely what the developments are going to happen. So you will see very soon, I think, quite new developments in renewable power.
Perfect, and I think that's a good place to leave it. And thank you again very much for joining us today and sharing your thoughts. Thank you as well for watching. This has been our final interview from AEF in Dubai 2015. I hope you enjoyed the series. And we look forward to broadcasting from another event soon. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you.